Our coverage of Computex 2026 from Taipei, Taiwan is brought to you by G-Skill, Thermaltake, and Cooler Master. Hello there! If you're worried about missing the big AMD Computex 2026 keynote presentation, don't worry, because there wasn't one. In fact, they didn't have a press conference or anything remotely formal like that, but they did do a pre-Computex press briefing where they told people like me the things that they're going to launch soon so I could tell it to people like you and have sort of good news and bad news on the plus side as opposed to CES 2026. In fact, about 1/3 or so of the press briefing was about consumer-focused products. But perhaps the reason they didn't do a formal keynote or press conference or anything is because what they're doing, for the most part, is taking products that have already launched, popping them in the microwave, and then reserving them to us as if they're a freshly baked meal. I'm not 100% sure what AMD was thinking with all these announcements, but there was one at least that I have specifically requested, which is to bring back the 5800X 3D so that people can build a system on the AM4 platform using DDR4 memory, which is relatively not as grossly inflated in price as DDR5 memory right now. And so we have the 5800X 3D AM4 10th Anniversary Edition, supposedly being brought back to celebrate the AM4 platform reaching its 10-year anniversary since it was launched a decade ago. So the 5800X 3D will be launching yet again for a new MSRP of $350 US. That's not as low as some of the early rumors where it was thought it might be around $300 or $310, but on the flip side, it is at least $100 less than its original MSRP, which was $450, and that was back in April of 2022. We're expecting the 5800X 3D 10th Anniversary Edition to be on store shelves again on June 25th. And to be clear, this is the exact same CPU that it always was, with 8 cores and 16 threads. It's Zen 3 based, it has a 4.5 GHz boost clock, and 100 megabytes of total cache thanks to the first generation 3D V-cache that it touts. And it will ship in a special box that says 10th Anniversary Edition, and it will be bundled with a carbide ice pad thermal pad, so that's somewhat useful, I suppose. And that's pretty much all AMD has said about the 5800X 3D AM4 10th Anniversary Edition. I had some follow-up questions, which I have asked. I don't have complete answers for them quite yet, so if I find out anything more, we'll put some text on screen right now. But my big question was, how widely available are these going to be? If AMD produces a bunch of them and they're readily available at $350, it's not like the best price possible because the 5800X 3D over the course of its lifespan on the retail market was definitely available for less than $300 on multiple occasions. But if AMD is producing a lot of these and there are a ton of them available, we might eventually see price cuts or sales or something like that. Perhaps. That might be a long shot, but that could just be wishful thinking on my part. I do believe that the AM4's platform longevity is worthy of some celebration. It is one of the sort of features of that platform that I gave AMD a lot of credit for because it was a stark contrast to what Intel used to do and maybe is still doing, but maybe won't be doing when Nova Lake launches anymore, which is only keeping a platform around for like 2 CPU launch cycles and replacing it every 2 years or so. So along with this 10th anniversary CPU that they're launching, they also announced that the AM5's platform longevity promise, which they initially established as we will continue making CPUs for this platform for at least up to 2027, has been extended, and now they say up to at least 2029. You will still see launches on the AM5 platform. Now when the AM4 launch happened and they made that promise, I was like, cool, that's a good thing to hear. Somehow though with this AM5 announcement, I'm feeling not quite as enthusiastic. Perhaps it is just the general PC hardware landscape or the fact that lots of companies are like, hey, PC gamers and PC builders, here's like stuff that you can still build with. It just happens to be, last generation or kind of old stuff that was already on the market. Now you can still build with that. It just costs more than it used to because of memory and storage prices. And there's also something of a legitimate fear, I think, that this might be an indication that AMD might be slowing down their product launches and taking longer to get around to launching like Zen 6 CPUs in the Ryzen 10,000 series, for example, because those were not part of the announcements today. There's one other CPU that was also launched, which is a consumer CPU and is a new CPU somewhat, although it is a Ryzen 7000 series processor, the 7700X3D, so a slightly cut down version of the 7800X3D, which is a very popular processor and enjoyed quite a bit of time on the market as the best CPU for gaming before it was eclipsed by the 9800X3D, and then I guess now the 9850X3D. But just like the 7800X3D, the 7700X3D will be an 8-core 16-thread processor. It is Zen 4 based, so again, it's slightly older architecture, but it is technically a new CPU. It has 2nd gen 3D V-cache, so 104 megabytes of total cache. The main difference between the new CPU and the 7800X3D is the new one has a 4.5 gigahertz boost clock, whereas the 7800X3D went up to 5 gigahertz. And the 7700X3D also has a slightly lower base clock, 4 gigahertz instead of 4.2. It is launching July 16th for $330, which is sort of an okay price, I guess, but this is of course still an AM5 CPU, which means it needs DDR5 memory, which means if you want to build with it in the near future, you're going to have to pay that DDR5 tax as well, which is one of the main things that is putting a huge damper on building PCs at the moment. Speaking of memory, would you guys be interested in a memory announcement that maybe encourages you to buy some new DDR5 memory? No? Well, they did that anyway. It's called AMD Expo Ultra Low Latency DDR5 Memory. AMD is working with a bunch of the memory manufacturers to come out with ULL DDR5 kits. And as far as I can tell, these are going to be memory kits that have either a dedicated or an extra ULL or ultra low latency Expo profile that you can enable in the BIOS just as you would with current Expo profiles. But the ultra low latency profile would be specifically tuned for minimizing latency as much as possible. According to AMD's charts, and these should be taken with a grain of salt, they're showing both average frame rate improvement and 1% low frame rate improvement. It's a 4% improvement going from the standard Expo profile to ultra low latency. This was supposedly tested across like 30 games or something like that, but I tried to dig into the notes to figure out a little bit more on what was going on. And it was tough to figure out. For the ULL memory, they listed 3 different cast latency settings at CL28, 30, and 36, which wasn't the case for the standard Expo settings or the base level JEDEC settings, which was DDR5 5600, so that's obviously why there's like a 14% increase there. But they didn't list anything as far as like when these kits will be available, or of course, how much they will cost. DDR5 memory is already expensive enough without having to buy some specialized kit with some new feature. So let's move on to graphics cards, or graphic card, I should say, the AMD Radeon RX 9070 GRE. And you might be like, didn't that already launch like last year in China? And you would be correct, but now they are launching it globally. Right now. Yeah, like right now, June 1st is when the 9070 GRE should be available in places other than China. It is still the same GPU based on a Navi 48 chip with 48 compute units, 3072 stream processors, 12 gigabytes of VRAM versus the 16 gigabytes on the 9070 and the 9070 XT. And for the 9070 GRE, it's on a 192-bit bus versus the 256-bit bus of its better siblings. But it could be okay if priced right, and the price is $550. Seems familiar. That seems like the exact same MSRP that they listed the 9070 non-XT for, which it has rarely actually sold for. Apparently they've just given up on the 9070 non-XT ever actually selling for its MSRP, so they're like, we could put the 9070 GRE in at that price. No one will notice, I'm sure. I'm kind of curious with this graphics card if they're going to maintain availability. Similar question as I had with the 5800 X3D, but it's definitely not a very exciting launch price. They had to use like current pricing for the 5060 Ti 16 gig, which is currently going for an absurd like $570 or something, to even make this seem somewhat reasonable. But really the only hope I could see for the 9070 GRE being like, and actually like, hey, this is a card you should get, would be if it goes for sale for like $500 or less. But you might be thinking, Paul, what about that heavily rumored RX 9050 8 gig that was like, maybe it's going to be a good entry-level budget card? There was nothing on that. Apparently those rumors are either false or it's for a GPU that's launching at some point in the future that they didn't want to announce at Computex. Speaking of warming over some stuff that already came out, just to sort of wrap up a few other things that they noted, the FSR 4.1 debut on the GPUs other than the 9000 series is still happening and is still on track. No other real changes or anything like that to note. I guess they just wanted to remind us that that's still happening. The RX 7000 series of GPUs based on RDNA 3 should get support for that in July, and the RX 6000 series based on RDNA 2 should still be in early 2027. And that pretty much covers everything in the presentation that that was specifically focused at consumers, PC building, PC gamers. We didn't hear anything on that rumored RX 9050 8GB, and we didn't hear anything about Zen 6, or the Ryzen 10,000 series of CPUs that we know is in the works, but we had no real official confirmation from AMD about that. AMD does have their own special event that is coming in July. It's called AMD Advancing AI 2026, July 22nd to 23rd in San Francisco, California, so probably going to be a lot of AI at that particular event, but if they did have something else to announce for consumer hardware later this year, that might be where we hear more about Zen 6, Ryzen 10,000 series, maybe the RX 9050, or who knows, maybe they have other GPUs in the works too. I have crazy thoughts all the time, and sometimes I vocalize them, as I'm sure you guys do as well. But that's all I have for my recap of the AMD not the AMD press conference, no, the AMD stuff that they told us to share with you, so I've done my due diligence there. I want to say a big thank you though to you guys for watching this video, and to my sponsors for Computex 2026, G.Skill, Thermaltake, and Cooler Master. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more Computex coverage, check the link in the description below for a full playlist. We have lots more coverage and content coming at you from Taipei, Taiwan, so we'll see you in the next video.